Hey, welcome to Prospect Theater Project's Happy Days Talkback. Off camera is Andrew Brown, and on camera we have director Nick Zagoni. We have Karen Heidelbach, who played Winnie, and Prospect Theater Project's founding artistic director Jack Souza. For those of you watching, you can ask your questions on Facebook, on our Facebook Live. You can also download the Vimeo app if you're watching on the phone and ask your questions there. Or if you're watching on a desktop or laptop, type in the chat box and we can hear your questions there. We're going to open discussion by talking about the season opener, Happy Days. And Jack Souza, why did you choose Happy Days to open our 20th anniversary season?
It was it kind of grew out of just the last few months of living under COVID and being isolated and just, you know, I was alternately kind of think of it as in terms of serving a prison sentence and also in terms of like being buried. And, you know, I think it was that idea of being buried that just reminded me of Happy Days. And then when I looked at it, I just, you know, I looked at it again. I just felt like that would be a great way to open the season because it's just this thing that we're all dealing with, whether we're conscious of it or not.
Thank you for sharing. Remember, if you're just tuning in right now, you can ask questions by entering on the chat box if you're on a desktop on Vimeo's website. If you're on a mobile phone, you need to download the Vimeo app or type it in on Facebook. Our Facebook Live feature will allow us to view the questions. Okay. Nick, you were the director for this production, and you were the director of photography as well, and you currently teach a film and television class at Delta Charter. And I know Prospect Theater utilized students to help with this production. How did you use this production as a way to give your students a real-world filmmaking and a broadcast experience?
Well, a few of the times, I mean, most of the time they kind of knew what to do. But what was a great experience was the umbrella flame up. There's one point where a parasol catches on fire, and I think they really learned how they needed to catch that, and that things don't go right sometimes when in rehearsals. When we did this, you know, when we just rehearsed before we even did the show, that this is going to be a wait. There's a lot of waiting. There's a lot of figuring stuff out. There's a lot of angling where we're going to put certain cameras that that was brand new to them, very, very new to them. But they enjoyed it. They really enjoyed it. And but it was frustrating at times because sometimes they had to find the right angles, the right places to be, the right movements, the right composition of shots, all that's on the fly.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine, you know, kind of diving into this. And are you dealing with advanced students or intro students in this for this production?
These were all advanced students. The beginning students wouldn't. If it was a normal year, maybe some beginning students, but the beginning students had not even touched a camera. So the advanced students, even then, the advanced students that came in, they had to get a refresher. They hadn't seen camera in 6 months. So they had to get refreshed on what to do. But they were a great troupe, they were so excited just to get out. And, you know, they were all socially distanced. They were all wearing masks, but it was just so good to be around, you know, their friends and get out of the house.
Yeah. You know, being cooped up for, you know, months on end without end in sight.
Yeah.
They
jumped at it.
Yeah, it must have been a really wonderful experience to just come into a space and do something they like to do.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
You mentioned a little about masks and about social distancing. Do you guys all want to share a little bit about the precautions that Prospect Theater went through, or did in order to ensure the safety of the crew, our students and our Prospect Theater crew and the cast as well?
Yeah, we were pretty fastidious. I think one of the first sort of guidelines was there was the stage area, and then there was the tech area, and whereas we weren't wearing masks on stage, it was actually quite easy for us to maintain distance. And when we walked off stage, we just would stay masked. And also as we sorted out where the cameras needed to be to make things work, there was both distance and everyone was wearing masks. And when we leave stage, I got to leave the stage a lot more than Karen did, but I put my mask on. The students were all wearing their masks. Nick stayed in his. Marty certainly stayed in her mask. We just, I think we just were smart and aware.
Yeah, I think most of the time I was the only one that was unmasked. Unless Jack was on. And I fortunately was very far away from anybody for, a long time during the segments. So it felt completely safe, and just wasn't that hard to make it happen.
I mean, in a way, one of the reasons the play ended up where it did in the season was because I knew that we could capture it and maintain those kind of protocols. There was only 2 actors, so and they they never really interacted that closely. So I just I knew that we could remain safe just because of the small cast and the small tech crew.
Yeah, just conceptually, the one of the points of the play is the distance between Winnie and Willie, and obviously there's no one else around to help Winnie out of her hole. So we just thought it worked really well as a season opener to that it would work, just logistically, but also that it plays into what we're all dealing with, is that we can't get near each other. We can't, we can't gather. So it worked.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I mean, that's the precautions that need to be taken in order to do this show. Happy Days certainly allows us to be available to take those precautions, just due to the nature of the play. We have a question from Jake. I'm going to answer very quickly. It's, can you still watch production? Yes, you can. You can visit prospecttheaterproject.org, and there, go to our box office and check out Happy Days tickets. Tickets, you can watch the show. You could pick today to watch it. You can watch it tomorrow as well. And you pick your time. You have 24 hours within either one of those days to watch it. So yes, tickets are still available. We have a question from Larry. Would you talk about the effect that acting had without a live audience, and the effect it had on you? So acting without a live audience.
Well, it's weird. I'll just say it. It's just weird. But again, for the play, it kind of works because Winnie is sitting there, essentially talking to Willie, for the most part, but talking to the air. So it kind of played into the aspect that there's no one really listening to her go on and on and on. But just as an actor, and I typically do theater, I don't do a lot of film work, so it was quite different, and I missed feeling the audience's response to things, and not necessarily laughs or anything like that, but when you're this close to an audience as you are at Prospect, you can feel everything as an actor. You can hear people breathe, you can hear them sigh, you can hear every little thing that they do, and to be essentially alone. Even though, we had camera folks and the director and our stage manager and all of that, they've seen us rehearsing for
Yeah.
weeks at a time. So
they're fully occupied with other tasks.
exactly. So they're not really paying attention or responding to what I'm doing. So it was hard. It was disconcerting, but like I said, it sort of plays into Winnie's experience. So I just used it, the absence of people, for her in terms of the character.
That thrill of opening night as a director backstage, listening to the response and, the kind of wringing of your hands and wondering how that was all gone. That was all missing. So that was the only thing that I missed. Just to, with an audience, what was the response going to be and how, that sort of sweat you have on your head, of opening night. And it's dreadful, but it's missed too,
Yeah, because as a director, that's what you're waiting for. You're waiting for the audience's response to, the story that you've crafted. So, and when you don't have it, it's just like, oh, well, okay.
Yeah.
You got to wait for reviews.
Yeah, it certainly highlighted how integral audience is to a theatrical experience. I mean, it's tangible, it's palpable, whether or not they're saying or doing anything, just their, that presence and that exchange of energy is a real thing, and it was missed.
And you've said this often, the communion, right? The communion.
The communion. Yes.
Yeah. That's needed.
You mentioned a little bit about your performance as Winnie, Karen. Winnie is a demanding role. I mean, you're on stage literally the entire time. What are some things you did to prepare for this production?
In stage. She was in stage.
Yes, not on.
I was built into the stage. Well, I love Beckett. I love all Beckett plays, and I understand, I think, that the sort of nature of Beckett's absurdity is that the characters continue to try, however futile things look. So my approach to Winnie is that she just keeps trying from moment to moment. And frankly, instead of worrying about, 90 minutes of me talking, I just thought about it moment to moment to moment to moment, because that's, what she's doing. And I think as an actor, you get kind of overwhelmed, looking at the big picture. And so, I found the arc through rehearsal in terms of, where Winnie's journey takes her over the course of, both acts. But I tried not to think about like the size of the job because that's just, that just gets your brain working in a place that's completely not useful. So,
I mean, in a way, the play doesn't invite that sense of a through line of like an overreaching arc.
As a matter of fact, you're missing parts of a through line. Because you have, we're essentially given to having to guess what happens between Act 1 and Act 2 and what that progression, how she went from just waist up to, to up to the neck, and, what were the days like, while that was all happening, and what's the next day going to be like. I mean, it's not realism. So there's sort of an absence of projecting, forward on what you just have to be in the moment all the time in order to do this kind of play, I think. So it doesn't really behoove you to get all lost in, Winnie's past and Winnie's future, to be honest, I think.
Yeah. There's only the moment
now.
there's only the moment
Yeah.
that she's in.
We have a question from Sherry, and this is a technical question. What was the rehearsal process like? How many rehearsals did you have to get to do all the camera shots?
A lot of rehearsals. I mean, we started in July, and that was it. It was kind of a double duty thing because I'm working with Karen. We're sussing out the play, and then also I'm standing in all these different areas before cameras even came in, figuring out where I was going to go with certain shots. What moment was I going to be stage right live, stage left live, center, and then maybe somewhere, and then wide. It was, there were, and then I changed my mind. So there was a lot of, I mean, that's something I was thinking about, right from the top, maybe a little bit too much, really. But I was thinking about it all the time in rehearsal, even as we were rehearsing just text.
I think we rehearsed for 3 weeks. Is that right?
Yeah.
Maybe 3.5.
It was the last week of July and then the August.
Most of August, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
The camera thing I definitely added another step to the process. And I think I'm just saying that because I know that I knew that this was going to be different, but I didn't really know how different, that was going to be, so I stepped in approaching it like I do every project, with those kind of assumptions of how progress was going to be made and what, what timelines we were going to tick off. And but I think Nick's preparation ultimately eased a lot of that because you were thinking about cameras and we had the opportunity to, rehearse camera work and
it was a double duty thing, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean it's different when you're directing for a camera versus an audience that is sitting here because you're, as a director, you're constantly looking for the space on stage where you want the audience to look at. But when you have a camera, that sort of takes that away from you. So
well,
you have to think about, angles and perspective and all that in a different way.
And in more so than any other show because the main character ain't moving.
Yeah.
And you got to figure out, and I ran into this right away when we were rehearsing was, you can't sit there like a director, director makes pretty pictures and all this stuff. And it's like, there's really not much else. So I really had a lot of time to think about camera angles because right now, I mean, I can't.
Didn't go anywhere.
Yeah. And even when you didn't go anywhere and finding angles, it's like, well, I mean, at times when Jack comes out and his head is back there, it's like, oh, great. Now I can find just something different, to look at the shots with his head just, carefully placed right behind you. And, it was difficult. And I didn't realize, going into it that, I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. And then like, wait a minute, this is hard.
You mentioned a little bit about changing your mind, right? When it came to certain things, you came with certain preconceived ideas or preconceived ways of how to do things. And then you have to change them on the spot. Can you talk a little bit about, Nick, your initial thoughts about directing this production and how they changed throughout the process? And, how did they change?
Yeah. It's pretty much like I was talking about. I mean, you can't sit there and, go cross left and let's see how that looks. There's none of that. I can't do that. So I had to, it was really more text driven, really helping Karen go from one, give her some through line. I actually kind of let her go sometimes just so she can connect one moment to the next, moment to moment, just kind of just letting her kind of go. And yeah, I think my my perceptions changed constantly with this play.
Yes, as it tends to. This question is for Karen. It's from Muggs. Muggs. I was impressed with Karen's apparent ease with multiple facial expressions, with close-ups, and it brought the audience into a play at a level that might be missed in theater.
Thank you.
Is there something you would do differently without the camera? And he says, I loved it.
Oh, is there something I would have done differently without the camera? I don't know. I mean, again, there's that sort of intangible thing, you know, that you feel when an audience is present, where maybe, I don't know, I physically would have adjusted a little bit, but or I would have potentially had to, honestly, I miss having people laugh at things that I thought, would be funny. But again, like I said, that, Winnie doesn't, it just works because Winnie doesn't have anybody to listen to her anyway. So I just, sort of carried on, with that idea. But I don't, when you're stuck in a hole, there's not a whole lot you can do physically. And you really, are limited to, the act one, I'm limited to my arms and my torso and my neck and, where I can look. And, I only have like a small radius. And I did feel at times, being a theater actor, and I was worried about the camera that I would overdo things just because I am used to acting for theater. And that's kind of the challenge, especially, if you're doing close-ups or whatever, that you don't get carried away, with facial expressions or eye movements or, so I don't know if I would have done,
One thing I can think of is maybe something vocally. You'd have to project more.
Yeah, and I felt like I was a little theatrical in my vocality with the performance as well. I mean, there were times when I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm being too loud. I'm projecting, because I'm used to projecting. But, so maybe I would have allowed her some softer moments.
Oh, I was thinking, because we talked about how you didn't have to. I think we could do softer moments.
Yeah.
From what I saw, we could do softer moments that you might not have been able to do
with an audience here. Yeah.
Just some lines and some moments where it got really quiet.
Well, and I don't have a ton to compare it to as far as film work, because I haven't done a ton of film work. I mean, little things here and there, but I mostly do theater, so I don't. I mean, I don't know. I'd like to do it again for an audience when we can have an audience. Yeah. I would do it again in a heartbeat.
In some ways, Prospect, like any other studio theater, is in terms of that differentiation between theater and film. Prospect and other studio theaters do kind of live in the gap. It's anyway, we're probably a little closer to film acting here generally anyway, because we are so close. It's not like we're filling a 2,000 seat house and
it's not like we need to get to the 50th row.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe, we were helped a little bit by that, but still there's no comparison, to having, a camera that far off your face. That's, yeah.
We have a question from April. Did you start the project with only streaming in mind, or did you hope at some point there would be an audience?
No, I mean,
we wished.
Yeah, we just wished. I mean, I was hopeful, and I, actually with this season, I certainly do not want to stream the season, but I knew coming into it that, and I'm really confident that with the second show, with our November show, that nothing's going to be significantly different. So I knew early on that these first couple shows we absolutely were going to have to capture and stream. Yeah.
A question from Larry, also about filming and streaming. Was the play performed and filmed all in one take?
We'll never know.
Giving it away.
What do you think, Larry?
We're gonna say yes for now.
Yes. Okay. Yes. For now. Yes. For now.
Full-hearted, yes.
Okay. I have another question from Muggs. I haven't taken a drama performing class. I certainly haven't studied Beckett as a playwright. Is there anything written by Beckett or scholars that offers any type of backstory for this play? Or is it your job to write one? If you did this, can you tell us about it?
Backstory for the character.
Yeah, there's plenty of discussion about this play. And, well, Beckett had a trip to the beach. And I forget, I don't know, Jack's probably more the... well, you guys probably know this information better than I do, but that there was an episode where he was with friends on the beach and saw somebody actually buried, like for fun. You know, you go to the beach and you bury your brother in the sand and run away, right? It was something along those lines, but this was a little different in that it's one of the few plays I think that has a female main character, which is different for Beckett because most of his main characters are men. It's also later than things like Waiting for Godot and Endgame, which are really more post World War II. So I don't know.
Yeah, Karen's right. There's no shortage of scholarly speculation about the story, but none of it is generated by Beckett.
No.
It's
Beckett,
also his only full length that was written in English. So what does that mean? He won't tell you, but I think there's something in there as far as this is a British play. This is something I think there's more of a British sensibility in this, more than
most
French
of Beckett's other work has been in French.
Yeah, French.
Although he's an Irishman, he wrote in French.
Yeah, he wrote in French. So I think there's something to that he'd write this particular one in English.
Jack brought in he had some journal entries regarding this play.
Yeah, there is I couldn't get a hold of the book. I tried really hard, but there is a production journal that Beckett wrote about one of the productions he worked on, and I think it was in France.
I don't know.
And so some of the excerpts from that were available, and those were interesting, but still none of those said that Winnie came from a small town in Minnesota, and
yeah, he doesn't give you any backstory on the character or whys, and typically things that actors look for, why is the character doing this? What are the reasons for this? Some sort of psychological reasoning for objectives and obstacles and where her mind's going, and I didn't have a lot of that stuff.
And in a way that goes to theme,
Right.
really
Yeah.
in a way that goes to theme and where meaning is derived, because the way when he poses these questions, if I can't see my legs, did I ever have them? And if you're removed from your past, did it ever happen? Was it ever there?
She's constantly reinventing herself and reinventing the situation and how she's going to cope with it. So it's, she's not grounded necessarily, I think, in much of anything, with the possible exception of Willie and certain moments that have to do with her relationship with Willie, I think.
Yeah.
Well, coming from a playwright background, I've found over the years, if you tell people what you were thinking, either they're going to be disappointed or they're going to tell you, no, you're wrong. No, I thought it was about this. I will not. I've come to the conclusion I don't say anything about my work, and I just say, what do you think? Because if you do, someone's going to go. I mean, if Beckett sat here and said, well, actually, it's about this, you kind of go, oh, really? Oh, well,
No,
gee,
it's
I-
not.
yeah, I didn't think that at all. I mean,
You should totally
yeah.
rewrite that.
yeah. Yeah. Well, you know what I do, and it's really just not good. I mean, I know Sam Shepard, you would never say it. And Mr. Shepard says nothing about his work. If he'd be asked at colleges to talk about his work and he'd go, well,
I
yeah,
hate endings.
yeah, I got a new truck. You guys want to see my truck? I mean, he would never talk about anything either. And I think, and over the years, I've come to realize why. Even like Mamet doesn't even like this. Mamet won't even go to this.
Yeah.
He won't even do the talkbacks anymore. So, because it puts a little seed in someone's head that, oh, this is what it's about, when I think it's better. And I think Beckett knew this, better to just let you build on it and make
interpret.
it become and
Yeah.
interpret it as something else that might be a lot better than what's in my head. Does that make sense?
Although he's pretty darn specific about making sure that you don't over-interpret at the same time,
Yeah.
which sort of lends itself to, that's his sensibility. He wants it to be like, it could be anywhere, could be anybody, could be anytime, could be any location, and then he doesn't like when you ground it in space and time that is
Yeah.
not the intention.
Mm-hmm.
That became a factor even at the level of set design. I know some of the early, what I was coming in with in some of the early discussions was, and I don't know why, maybe it was because I read that piece about the inception of the idea, the seed of the idea. But I was thinking, okay, this is going to be the sandy expanse, and then after really not very long at all, I realized that was placing it in too specific a context. It just needed to be this landscape. I even shied away from words like post-apocalyptic because it puts it in this context that denies interpretation.
Yeah.
That denies being able to recognize yourself as winning. There is no whole.
Nick, I know you did some
Metaphorical.
I know you did some digging, Nick. Some dramaturging. Is that, can I say to verb that dramaturging?
Dramaturgy.
Yeah, turging. I don't know. Can you talk a little bit about Beckett's background and past, and how that relates to today, and why it, added to the production of doing this performance now?
Well, as Beckett, probably a young boy at the time in 1918, went through a pandemic. So I think he
Couple of wars.
Two patricidal wars.
yeah, I think he knows what it's like to be stuck. And I think that goes back again to the British. I mean, they were stuck too during World War II. I mean, they couldn't go anywhere. They were bombed continually, couldn't move. You had to stay inside.
Lights out.
Huh?
Lights out.
Yeah.
The lights out. Right.
Of course, he was, during that time, it's not like he was in London. He was
He
just
was in
better.
He was in the French Resistance.
He was in the French Resistance, so
Yeah.
he was, but he was certainly no stranger to traumas that surpass understanding.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's the connection. I think that's he'd think what we're going through now is he'd get it.
Yeah. 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 Oh, this again?
Right.
This question is for, I guess, Nick and Karen's from Linda. Did Beckett include kissing the gun in the stage directions? And Karen, what did you make of that action? And by the way, I love the play. And that's from Linda.
That is in the stage directions.
It certainly is.
She
yeah.
takes it out. She looks at it. I'm totally paraphrasing. and she gives it a kiss and she puts it back.
Yeah, she gives it a kiss, puts it back. Yeah. Yeah.
I have no idea. I mean, I think, well, we talked a lot about the gun. We talked a lot about the gun and what the gun could mean, what it potentially meant before, that it might be something that Winnie had taken from Willie in order to keep Willie from harming himself. I mean, they do kind of allude to that in the text, sort of directly. But why Winnie had the gun in her bag is, I don't know. For me, I think it for the character, I should say, not for me, but for the character, the gun being there in Act 1 gives her an out, gives Willie an out. And so that when it's still there in Act 2 and she doesn't have her arms, it's still there for Willie to potentially maybe get if he's still there. But it's not part of her world anymore. It's something that she can kind of see when she looks to the right. And it sort of represents a loss of ability to make a decision for herself anymore. I mean, she's really stuck in terms of Act 2. So I kind of thought about it as a little bit of power, not power. That's the wrong word, I guess. Well, maybe it is the right word. Power over Willie, in that I have the gun. It's in my bag, and you can't get it. And we're not gonna off ourselves. We're gonna struggle through it. We're gonna cope. We're gonna figure it out.
But it's always an option.
But it's there just in case, in case it gets way too hot.
Of course, by the end of the second act, you can't get to it.
Right.
I apparently can't climb the mound to get to it.
So then the gun becomes something, that its potential is there, but neither of them can reach it, essentially, in the end. So that potential, in order to relieve themselves of the situation, that potential's gone now as well in Act 2. So it just adds like this another layer of
angst
of just like, oh gosh, could this get any worse? But the kiss still to me is kind of I don't know. It's opportunity. It is, thank God you're there, but that's true for everything in the bag. Not just the gun.
And I like the way it's not a loving kiss. It's not some compassionate. Yeah, no. Because it just says
just in case kind of kiss.
Yeah, and it just says that she kisses the gun. It doesn't say how.
Yeah. It's like your side guy.
My wingman?
Yeah.
Question from April. Having done this project through film video, do you now believe it's more difficult or challenging to do live theater or film performances? Or maybe just talk about the differences in film acting and theater acting and the similarities.
Go ahead.
Yeah, give me live theater any day. Any day. I mean, it's just the process of capturing on film is so painstaking, and you get, it deprives you of, as you're preparing, it deprives you of any sense of forward momentum and any immediate sense of forward momentum. And maybe that's the absence of the art of the audience, too. That's you feel less like you're taking.
Well, you just don't feel connected to anything as an actor anyway. I just feel disconnected. I feel like and it's not like, and I know maybe a lot of people might think that it's, you're looking for adulation or, applause or, the curtain call or whatever, but it's not that. It's like, I like to hear the audience breathe, and gasp and cry and, laugh and all those things. And I just don't get the same sort of gratification, I guess, from film. And it takes a long time take a film too. And though, even though, we weren't doing this, over a long, filming period, like, feature films are made, anything like that, I'm sitting in a hole for what should have been 90 minutes that didn't end up being 90 minutes. So it was a lot of time in the hole.
Yeah. And you're actually kind of deprived of participating in what that final product is too, because we had five cameras running, and all of that raw footage went to an editor with some instructions, and there was a process there, but still, there was someone else who was putting all of those pieces together.
Yeah, I mean, when you're doing a play as an actor, you have some sense of how things are going. You can feel it. You can feel it with your scene partners. You can feel it even in rehearsal when you don't have an audience. You can get the sense that what you're doing needs work, or you need to tweak something, or things are going well, but it's like even when we did have scenes together, there's always like this other thing that's in the scene with you, which is the camera, which is different because you can't it's not like the audience, so it feels almost a little intrusive. And it's not to say that one's, I'm not suggesting one's better than the other. It's just different.
Different, and certainly different than what I think we're used to.
Right.
You're probably a little better adjusted to, to inviting the camera into your artistic expression. But
well, I just think, it's apples and oranges. It's two different. But, when there's so much that is taken care of when you just casting, in with film, you cast it. And really, then it comes down to if they've certainly done their homework and you like what they're doing. And really, then it comes down to, I can't remember the actor that said, hit your mark and say your line.
It's like Spencer Tracy, you say your lines, don't bump into the furnace.
Yeah, and that's all you have to do. When you've been cast in a part and you do your work, that's really all you have to do, because the camera is gonna cut away on something that you're not doing well, and it's what you're doing well, it's gonna push in, or it's gonna do something different and get those good parts. So
yeah, and when you're being filmed, you really have to trust the directors. It's a director's medium. You have to trust that the director is getting the shot that they want. I, as an actor, have very little control over what anything looks like.
Whereas in theater, once you step out on stage, the director no longer has any control over what you're doing.
True.
I mean, the director's hoping that you exexecute the blocking and the lines that you,
to the best of your ability.
Right. And you do, but
right. There's also what's also missing with film acting is that opportunity the next night to do it again.
Yeah.
And that process of a 2 to 3 week run where you can really get better at it. Yeah. And in a film, we shot it once, and then I'm sure Karen, I know a week later, I'm like, well, God, I wish, this week, it's a week later. I'm like, well, you could have done that. You can really work on it, over the course of 3 weeks. You can still work on it. And
it's not that, one would necessarily be better than the other. In theater, sometimes just, you'll have moments where you go, oh, that was a really good moment. And then the next night you may have one of those, but it's in a completely different spot. And, you don't get to, when you're on stage, you get to experience the show several times, and I'm used to that, I guess. Yeah. And I love that aspect of theater. So in a sense, it feels kind of undone for me, just because I want to do it like 50 more times. Yeah. Maybe not 50.
A good note from Steven, one of the viewers, a ditto from the audience perspective. It's very difficult to watch on screen. Really the only advantage is being able to pause and play to take care of it and come back when you want to. So the performance is brilliant, but the magic of immersion in theaters it was missing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing about, you shouldn't be able to pause. That's one of the reasons that theater's so wonderful, is that you can't pause. I mean, you have an intermission at times that structurally gives the audience a break, but it's usually crafted by the playwright to be a moment that break is earned. But we send it into homes, and we don't know when you have to pause and feed your dog, or whatever.
Yeah.
And we wish you couldn't, but
So, Karen, you were bound, literally.
bound.
You
50 Shades of Beckett.
you're physically limited during this play.
yeah, it was.
How was that challenging as an actor?
Actually, it was kind of freeing in a weird way, because when you only have so much available to you, there's only so much you can do. So if I'm on stage and not in a hole, I have the rest of my body to think about, and when you're creating a character, you create their physical presence in space at the same time that you're thinking about other things. And with Winnie, the whole is part of her. She is the whole. The whole is her. So it kind of, that whole becomes the obstacle that you're fighting against. And it's weird because usually, when you have an obstacle as a character, you're trying to get past that obstacle, but she can't get out of the hole. So you just have to deal with it, and then use it as much as possible. But I focused on the physicality, from here up. And then when I was up to my neck, I focused on my face, and at the same time that I'm using my face as much as possible, because Beckett sort of specifies that she can't move her head right or left too much either. So, and that's by design. I mean, he did it on purpose. So
Yeah. Just embrace it. Own it.
just go with it. And again, then because you have a camera up in your face, you don't want to do too much either, because you don't want to I don't want it to be ridiculous. I don't want to be up there like, doing too much of that. So yeah, it's kind of it's a bit of a balance.
Jack, do you want to talk a little about the technical direction for the show, and if you had to alter it at all for the cameras being in place? Or was your first conception changed by the presence of cameras?
In one instant, and in a very slight regard, once we started kind of working with the cameras, Nick asked that the hole be pitched upwards a little bit, so it didn't look like she was just standing behind a facade, so that we could know that she was actually immersed. She was in a hole, and that adjustment was really small. But here, set design is always kind of fluid. So there was a progress through concepts. I mean, there was a design process that led to what we had on stage, and I think, I don't know. I mean, was it problematic? I mean, I felt like I gave you enough of the front to be able to kind of get around it without having to fully realize the mound. I mean, I built it a lot like I'd have built it for seating in here.
Again, it's like, this was a film of a live production, but there's moments where, with this background where the camera would get Karen and these hills, and then I'd back up, and then you'd have this frame. And I'm like, oh, now it looks like a play. And then sometimes it looked like a film, and sometimes it looked like a play.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to get in the mindset that it's okay to show that stuff in back, because this is merely a document of a play, a live show. But that screws with a film director, because you're like, sometimes it really looked like, she was back there in those backgrounds, and the realism of the mound looked really great up front. And then you'd get a little closer, and then you could see certain things.
Yeah.
The mesh of the bounds, certain. So it was a game, that I had to just like keep correcting myself that it's okay. But there are times where, God, it was like, I was like, I really could make this a movie. I really could make this a really nice, if I wanted an audience to think it was a live or a film, a realistic film, could go there. I could go there.
We talked about it a little bit too. I mean, there were some early discussions where we were talking about, green screen for reverses, and then I think we did finally just all together embrace the idea that this is in a theater, and it's okay to see the curtains back there when we do one of those
it's
side
okay.
shots.
We're not trying to put one over on anybody.
Yeah.
It's a and it's such a theatrical show. It's really not made for, it's not made for film anyway.
Right.
It's really not.
Mary asked if you could talk a little bit about the lighting choices. So the halo effect was intriguing.
Did I have a halo?
Yes, that was
totally on
absolutely intentional. I labored hard. In some ways, the lighting this was easier. I mean, it was essentially a proscenium kind of staging. A little bit of a thrust, but essentially a proscenium kind of staging. So, and that just simplifies simplifies lighting choices. The halo effect, I'm not sure actually what generated that. It might have been some bounce off of the frame.
Well, the thing is, really, Jack lit it for a theatrical production, but as far as the cameras are concerned, I could make it whatever I wanted to. It really didn't need a, because we can play with f-stops and change things on the fly, and I mean, you can make it.
Add a filter here.
I can add a different filter and we really played with that. I got a lot of help from Dane, checking certain, because we all the cameras had to have the same f-stops and the same filters and everything, but we played with certain styles, certain looks, that really the lights didn't matter. I mean, they did, but they didn't. The lights, it tells a story. It can tell a story either way. Again, do you want to do the post-apocalyptic thing? How do we want it to look?
Right.
Yeah. And going off what Jack's lighting did really kind of made those questions, more less, because you can tell what Jack was going for in the lighting, and we really didn't have to discuss it that much.
Okay, we have one last question, and it's from Arnold. How do you work to create a satisfying experience for the audience while presenting a play that resists notions of narrative structure and character arcs?
Okay, that's worth hearing again.
How do you create a satisfying experience for the audience while presenting a play that resists notions of narrative structure and character arcs?
I think ultimately that resides in being able, even without that narrative structure, which I think that's well observed. I think that resides in being able to have some empathy with the situation that your protagonist is in. I mean, this is where we started. I mean, I feel like I've been in a Beckett play for 6 months now. It was, I think, in spite of those structural anomalies in this play, I still think that there was an essential avenue through which you could empathize and identify with the protagonist and what the protagonist was struggling with. How to maintain a level of normalcy, some sense of normalcy in a dire and worsening situation.
Well, and we might also just add that the word satisfying, it means that's going to mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And I mean, in terms of being satisfied, with the performance, can you be satisfied, I guess, with or compelled to listen, or like Jack said, to empathize with Winnie, while maybe not necessarily being satisfied by a complete narrative, because frankly, Beckett didn't care about complete narratives, or that you follow this journey and then you're satisfied. Not necessarily that things are resolved or that it's a happy ending or what have you, because that wasn't part of his, that wasn't what he was trying to do.
Narratives for Beckett, I don't think ever have a kind of continuity. They're always fragmented. They're
so I think you have to find, as an audience member with a Beckett piece, you have to find your relationship to the characters. Like who are these people? How do I relate to them? In terms of, being able to empathize and being pulled into their story. But I don't think you're ever, with Beckett, going to narratively be satisfied, because that's kind of, he was trying to illuminate the fact that this is all very unsatisfying. Right? I mean,
it's a rule breaking play.
Yeah.
And by breaking the rules, it's, like a lot of plays that break the rules, it's not done very often. So when you see, when you see a Happy Day, I mean, that's why I wanted to get involved in it. I mean, it's not something that a lot of artistic directors are going to choose. And so when you see that, you, as a theater artist, you want to get involved in it. And as a playgoer, you should see it, because they just don't come around, these type of plays, because they're tough and they don't satisfy audiences.
Right. I always just think it's so interesting that, that unsatisfying element seems more like realism to me, and always has, than actual realism, which has a narrative, which has a resolution typically, and it has a, that it's like, okay, that's crafted, and that's, but actual life, isn't actually that crafted. And is pretty dissatisfying. At times. Not all the time.
Okay. Well, any final remarks from our cast and director?
Thank you for your questions.
Yes, thank you.
Really
thank you for joining us and participating this way.
Yes, thank you so much. Don't forget, there's still 2 days left to watch Happy Days. You stream it. You can go to prospecttheaterproject.org, visit our box office, purchase a ticket. You have 24 hours on your selected date to watch the performance. Thank you so much for attending, and stay tuned for more events at Prospect Theater Project.